Of course, the opposition is part of what my government represents. What we have been presenting during this conference is the business opportunities and the opportunities to invest in Greenland. I'm not here to discuss the policies toward or against any certain minerals. I'm very clear in my position as my government is in terms of the question of rare earth elements and uranium. We have a very distinct and clear goal to extract and produce rare earth elements, and this is what the rare earth element projects in Nunaata is all about. Looking at why we are not accommodating the minority of the Greenland population. Look at the past couple of years. The previous government has introduced funding for non-governmental organizations in order to safeguard the legal, technical, and public adherence to be part in the public consultation process in the mining processes. And I think the revision of the Minerals Act also has given a better access for the public consultations in terms of longer hearing process, but also to ensure that there's what we call a pre-hearing procedure in order to safeguard all the concerns for all mining projects, not only for the rare earth elements, but also including the uranium aspect. So I think the government is doing what we believe is the right term and the appropriate steps. Looking at the stage of Greenland, I think all presenters from Greenland have been pointing out that there's a huge unemployment. Looking at South Greenland as a region, I think last year alone, there were 159 people who left the region. And I think we are in a state where there is need for all efforts to create jobs and growth. So I don't think we are so prosperous that we can turn down any opportunity. Looking at the migration problem, I think the essential problem why people leave Greenland is due to the lack of job opportunities and the lack of housing conditions in Greenland due to the high living costs in Greenland. So I think there's need for appropriate steps to mitigate the migration, the unemployment, and many other issues that hasn't been raised in this conference. Thank you.
And the last, yeah? I think this is all we have time for, so I'm very sorry, but we have to move along. So thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you so much for showing up and your interest. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we have come to the part where we are still behind schedule, so I would please welcome to the next section, which is involvement of the local communities. And to present that and moderate it is Pernille Bengtsen. She is from the Department of Foreign Affairs. Pernille, thank you.
Okay, I think everybody's ready again. Happy to see that you stayed, at least the majority of people. For the next session, we're going to talk about the involvement of the local communities, securing benefits to communities from the new industrial activities. I'm very pleased to present to you the panel consisting of Honorable Minister Vitus Qujaukitsoq, Minister of Industry, Labour, Trade and Foreign Affairs, Government of Greenland. Then we have the Mayor of Kommune Kujalleq in South Greenland, Jørgen Weber Johansen. And then we have Anders Blom, Chairman from Protect Sápmi. And then we have Jens B. Frederiksen, representing True North Gems. And then finally, Hafstein Helgason, Chief Representative for the EFLA Consulting Enterprises, or Engineers, sorry. So welcome. I'll hand over the word to the Minister as Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I have the pleasure to oversee the matters concerning social impact assessments and impact and benefit agreements in regards to mineral and mining projects. We have a quick review on the development of Greenland, where the Home Rule government was introduced in 1979, and our Self-Rule government was introduced in 2009. Our Mineral Resources Act was in order from January 1st, 2010. Looking at the challenges for Greenland, we have a demographic challenge of a growing elder population in Greenland, of those over 65. And we anticipate that the group of elders will be more than doubled in the next 25 years. We have a general level of education which is low, and we have few income sources. The main income source today contains of export of fish and shrimps. If we look at the extractive sector, the coalition parties of Siumut, the Democrats and the Liberal Atassut has agreed that we should have a focus on the resource industry to be developed to supply more income and revenue and generate more revenue to Greenland. We have an oil and mineral strategy which was revised in 2014, and the strategy is going to be in order until 2018. And the main focus is, of course, utilizing the projects that should be for the benefit of Greenland in terms of creating new jobs in order to generate local supplies, increased income and knowledge transfer. We look at the extractive industry to benefit Greenland society. Benefits should be identified through what we call the social impact assessments. The assessments go through public reviews, and the social impact assessment shall be approved by the Greenland government. benefits secured in impact and benefit agreements with municipalities. The typical benefits secured in impact and benefit agreements, the so-called IBAs, is the use of local workforce, the use of local enterprises, processing of minerals locally, and to generate revenue to Greenland, not in IBAs. Transfer of knowledge, and to generate funds for educational, cultural, and social purposes. The participants in the impact and benefit agreement is a three-party agreement between the Greenland government, the municipalities, and the project proponents, in this case, the companies. Looking at the most preceded projects, you see that the percentage of the local supply has already been determined in few projects. Others are to be confirmed. There is an estimate of jobs to be generated and the estimated revenue, all according to the life of mines. You have seen the most progressed projects in my previous presentation, so I'll just give you a few clues on what is in stake in terms of the IPAs. So thank you for this brief introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And moving on to Mayor, please. The word is yours. Tagana.
Goeienaand. Ataqinartut inatsisartut siulittaasuat. Nunatsinni naalakkersuisut siulittaasuat. Ataqinartoq Islanni presidentia. Naalakkersuisut arnat angutillu. Your Excellencies, the Speaker of the Parliament in Greenland, Inatsartut, the leader of Naalakkersuisut, members of Naalakkersuisut, Your Excellency President Grimson, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to voice our views at this conference. In Kommunequyallaq, the municipality of South Greenland, we have now for many years experienced a continuous declining population base. During the past 8 years, we have seen approximately 12% of our municipal population move elsewhere. Now it goes without saying that when you are fewer people, you also have fewer tax-paying citizens. And with less income, the fewer opportunities you will have to generate better services for your constituents, which in turn leads to more people seeking opportunities elsewhere. I know it certainly does sound as an alternative form for political career planning, especially when you live in an area with the lowest mean income and pay the highest taxes, while at the same time paying the highest costs for infrastructure services. But ladies and gentlemen, that is our reality. I also believe this to be the situation for many other Arctic municipalities which they can relate to. It probably also explains our extreme interest in securing benefits for local communities from new industrial activities. The legislation within Greenland concerning the potential development of new industry based on the utilization of our mineral resources is very strict, and so it should be, to safeguard the environment, the health of the workers, and the well-being of local communities close to the resource. The law also requires, as the minister just presented, that any mining corporation applying for a production or exploitation license to engage with the government and the municipality and negotiate an impact and benefit agreement. A production license cannot be granted unless the three parties have signed an impact and benefit agreement. So it's not an option, it's a requirement. The IBA is therefore of paramount importance for the local municipality to have a say in the development of utilization of local natural resources. As a matter of fact, we think that the IBA process is of such high value that this kind of framework should be applied to all areas of utilization of natural resources, and also to all larger infrastructure and construction projects. This is why our municipality already suggested this to the Greenland government more than 2 years ago. Why shouldn't large fisheries companies with large government-granted quotas not be required to have an impact and benefit agreement with the local communities in whose economic zone they operate and are benefiting from? And why not the same for all larger infrastructure projects? But however large my support for IBAs is, I still think it would be to the benefit of us all here in Greenland to consider how we can ensure a higher degree of effectiveness in our administration of this legislation, especially with regard to some projects. No one mentioned, no one forgotten. We need to focus on producing results, not on enjoying the process. Because if we are not able and willing to negotiate and to seek to meet one another, to compromise where necessary, then we will not create any new jobs. If we do not create any new jobs, we do not generate any new income for our country. And we will continue to see a population decline in most areas of Greenland, despite the richness in resources. And we will also continue to be dependent on the block grant from the Danish state. So, as our Minister of Finance and Mineral Resources repeated yesterday, and as has been said in this country for the past 25 years, the status quo is not an option. We need to move on. We need some action. We also need to understand that if we want to be able to attract foreign investors, we need to be an accountable, consistent, reliable, constructive partner to negotiate with in order to be perceived as an attractive place to invest. We need to look around in our neighborhood, as President Grimson mentioned yesterday, and see what kind of tax incentive structures and export supporting arrangement countries like Iceland and Canada has to offer the different projects and their investors. We need to learn from these, get inspired, and apply relevant similar measures here in Greenland. How difficult can it be? For me, the securing of benefits for local communities from new industrial activities is all about creating a sustainable platform for self-reliance. Creating a sustainable platform also means that the IBA negotiations can not only focus upon the quantity of workers directly or indirectly employed by the mineral projects. It also needs to focus on the quality. We need to assure that we develop our human capital in such a manner that local Greenlanders with the right acquired skills in some years will be able to participate at all levels of operation, including the processing facilities. In our municipality, we wish that the very extensive common knowledge which our people have regarding hunting and fisheries and the utilization of our land is also developed within the minerals area. We have to secure that our children, our young people, and their parents get a higher level of insights with regard to the geology of their local area, and not least how these local minerals can be utilized to generate income. Why? Because, as the president of Nunaata Tungavik Incorporated, Kathy Taudungi, told us yesterday, we need to create economic development, to create hope, to create jobs, instead of focusing on social problems all the time. Because it is all about being self-reliant, being able to take care of yourself and your own. And finally, let us not forget that securing benefits to communities is all about commitment. Commitment to be part of a positive change in cooperation with others. Even if you are a local, government-owned, semi-monopoly company, this also means that your headquarters and your top-level management has the commitment to be part of your local community. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Mayor. I invite Anders Blom to come up here. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Presidents, ministers, friends of the Arctic, and I'm especially grateful to the government of Greenland that made it possible for me to come here today. Allow me to present myself first. I am the chairman of the Protect Sapmi Foundation, but I am also a member of the Arctic Economic Council, where I represent the Sami Council. I have also an interest in the World Economic Forum Global Agenda Council on the Arctic, and I used to be managing director of the Swedish National Reindeer Herders Association, and besides that, I work professionally today with business development. I'm going to talk about my personal experience from working within Sapmi, the land of the Samis. Sapmi is an area in Scandinavia encompassing 4 nations, parts of Sweden, parts of Norway, parts of Finland, and parts of Russia. We have a quite different situation from what we hear from Greenland and from North America. We do not have land titles. We do not have the rights to subsurface resources. It means that every industrial project, in a way, is a competing project to our traditional trades like the reindeer husbandry. The Sami cultural landscape, last picture here, is very old. There should have been a picture of modern reindeer husbandry as well. We see rock carvings from the Alta area, and we see reindeer corrals, and we see a boat and fishing, and we see a modern fishing boat. But it is about 7,000 years between the pictures, and there are probably no other industries in Europe equally old. As we have heard before, we are standing in front of a lot of challenges. There is something about my presentation, so some of the pictures are getting lost. But anyway, we are standing in front of a lot of challenges, and the melting of the ice creates the possibilities to find resources to a level we haven't seen before in the Arctic. About 22% of the Earth's oil and gas resources are probably to be found in the Arctic, besides all the minerals that we have heard of before. All this creates challenges, as we have heard before, to both Sápmi and to the Arctic. Challenges how we should cope with mining, with windmills, with roads and infrastructure, with forestry, with hydropower plant, tourism, shipping, predators, and it's a problem we also have in Scandinavia. This is a very time-consuming activity. A typical reindeer herd in districts spends about 10 to 50 contacts each month due to competing land interests. They spend up to 40 hours a month traveling and meeting with external interests, industrial projects, and the time for dialogue is very limited, and the issue is often very complex, and you have to ask yourself who helps the indigenous right holders in these processes. But there are also challenges for companies with interest in Sápmi. Who do you get correct information about indigenous right holders? Who do you talk to? How do you perform your indigenous right due diligence that you are supposed to do according to the OECD guidelines? Where do you get knowledge concerning traditional knowledge, which is the driving force in many of the traditional trades and livelihoods? And how do you guarantee a fair, free, prior, and informed consent process, as you should do according to the United Nations Declarations of the Right of Indigenous People or the International Tribal Convention 169? And as an industrialist, what can you do in order to speed up the project process and make the shareholders more happy? In the Chinese language, there is a concept for crisis, Weiji, which consists of two parts: a dangerous situation and chance for possible development. And we have to cope with both. We have to see the danger, but we do also have to see the possibilities. So what is then Protect Sápmi? Well, we are a Norwegian-based foundation. It was founded by the Swedish and Norwegian Reindeer Herders Association. We are predominantly working in Norway, and we work to bring capacity to Sami right holders in their contacts, in their encounters with developers with competing land interests. When you are doing that, you need strategies for cooperation between the indigenous peoples and industry. You have to have a human right-based approach. You have to work with capacity building. You have to work with the concept of free, prior, and informed consent, FPIC. You have to see if you can form a social license to operate to the industry, and we work a lot also with stewardship. When you're struggling for sometimes survival and sometimes for cooperation, you have to choose your methods, and basically you can choose between conflict or dialogue. We prefer to work with dialogue, but sometimes that doesn't work, and then only conflict remains. When we work with the right holders, we often work with a model consisting of two steps, a negotiation model. We have a process agreement and we have a main agreement that we work with. The first step is the process agreement, which aims to bring capacity to the community right holders, which means that they have to be free in the process, which is the F in the FPIC. It doesn't mean that you accept the project. The agreement should also be done as early as possible, which is prior. We give the framework on how to perform the assessments and how to engage the communities in order to get to be informed. And we might lay the foundation for the coming dialogue that might lead up to consent. The main agreement is a long-term agreement between the parties, which could encompass benefit sharing, terms of reference for future corporations, terms for conflict resolution and mitigation measures, and how to clean up after the industrial period is over. But why should companies bother to take part in processes like this? Well, The international auditing company Ernst & Young are annually giving out reports of different topics, and this one is from the mineral industry. And in 2014, they elevated the social license to operate to third place on its list of the greatest business risks for mining industry. It was only the risk of lack of capital and lack of productivity that had a higher risk. So you could say that social license to operate have been integrated in many corporate social responsibility projects. And here you see some of the trademarks that you might recognize that have a social license to operate, or at least a sustainable behavior incorporated in these marks. I also said that we work with stewardship. And what is then stewardship? I saw the word stewardship in the WWF's presentation. Well, stewardship is an approach and a system that combines financial success with social and environmental responsibility. So it's a system for corporate citizenship, an approach that is based on common and shared values and practiced by companies, individuals, organizations, communities, and competent authorities. So it's not only values, you also have to practice the stewardship. Do we have that kind of activities in the Arctic? Well, this picture is really corrupt. I'm losing text. Yeah, I'm not, so I have to improvise a bit. Well, I started to count, and I stopped when I reached 20 different instruments for corporate social responsibility. And besides that, we also have international law relevant for the Arctic. But why should companies be interested in working with these kinds of instrument? Well, I discussed with the president of IKEA last autumn, and he said that in 2020, IKEA will not buy a single piece of wood if it's not certified from responsible resources. And in this case, they are referring to the Forest Stewardship Council. But is this enough? Will those systems really be enough to safeguard the interest in the Arctic? No, we don't think so. We think that we need to develop a stewardship in the Arctic that combines a balance between ethical values with business values. That is a system based on geography, not industrial branch. And there is actually now a process going on within the Arctic Economic Council in order to develop a system for an Arctic stewardship. And I'm part of that process. It is now out for questioning among the members. I stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for the submit perspective. Now moving on to True North Gems.
Thank you, Your Excellency, the President of Iceland, the Chairman of the Parliament, the Premier, and all the participants. Thank you for giving us the possibility to speak here at the Arctic Circle. I will just start a little with telling about the mine we are creating, we are building south of Nuuk. It is in B-line, direct line from Nuuk. It's about 160 kilometers, and the sail route from Nuuk is about 180 kilometers. Down there we are building a mine where we hope to go to production here very soon. We hope that the first stones will go through all the systems and be ready late this summer. What is necessary to start a mine up here is that you have to have the permit for exploitation. The next one is that you have to have the production and closing plan. And then we have to have an impact benefit agreement before we could start up building this mine. The impact benefit agreement is between the government and the municipality and True North Gems Greenland, the mining company. The IBA is a very good possibility for the company to have a collaboration with the government and not at least with the municipality. For the company, the IBA is a very good way to show some CSR, some cooperation, social responsibility, which is, you can say, in many ways, is in the IBA. One of the other things is that through the IBA, it's possible for the company to create a kind of local ownership in the society. So it's not only foreigners coming in, taking out values, but that a lot of people can be a part of this. It's important for us to say too that we don't expect all other companies to have the same kind of impact benefit agreement, the IBAs, because of course it's different societies, it's different companies, and it's different resources that the mining companies are going after. But one of the things which is very important for us is that there will, through the IBA, be very, very clear frames, clear rules for what the society can expect from us and what we can expect from the society of demands. So it will be much easier to work together in the future. As you can see here, there is some pictures of some of the workers in the mine. This is in the construction phase, and some part of the IBA is there is demands on how many percent should be locals, how many apprenticeships we will have to have, use of local suppliers and subcontractors, and then in this IBA we have made a cultural fund where we have to put in about 200,000 Danish kroner each year to use in the near settlement in the south, a little north of the mine, but south of Nuuk. Beside that, we will have to create an educational fund where we will put in 1 million every year, which is for educational purposes. Of course, we expect that a lot of this money is money going to people who are educated so we can use them in the future. We have in Greenland, we have a subcontractor we are working with. It is a Greenlandic company, LNS Greenland, owned by Norway, LNS in Norway, but they have been doing all the construction down there. They started up in 2014, September, and there has been between 40 and 60 full-time positions down there. And I can tell you that all the employers has been local. So we have managed to use carpenters, electricians, engineers, and a lot of other people who are local and people here from Greenland. And at the other hand, we have in this city, in our office, Tunos Greenland, we have been 6 people working in full-time positions, and all are locals here too. When we talk about locals, it is important for us to work very closely to the local society in Fiskeneset, which is the settlement which is close to the mine. And as you can see here, there's a picture of Adu. Adu, he is from Fiskeneset, one of the first who started in our project. And we have had 7 people from Fiskeneset working in our project, and right now they are 6. What we can see here is that there is there's a lot of men working down there, but there is women too. In our office, we have 2 women, and at the mining site, there is about 7 women working with different kind of jobs. The age down there is quite different too. We have workers who are about 18 years old, and we have older guys who are about 70 years old. So everybody is welcomed. It only depends on how good they are at working. So then there is a lot of additional works too. In the future, we will be in the mine. Will be about 80 people working, but beside that, we have a collaboration with a local company about security, and this picture is kind of historical because it's the first local security guards working in a mine in Greenland. So the workers down there, the security guards, they're very proud of being a part of this. We have had a lot of negotiations before with ISS Greenland, and we have managed to raise, you can say, the knowledge about security in Greenland, get new technical possibilities into the project. But beside that, we have used about 72 different kind of companies locally from Greenland in this project. So it creates a lot of waves in the society. A lot of other people is working with us on this, and here there is, of course, people who are working, paying their taxes and so on, and we expect that to be a part of it in the future too. In the end here, I will say that what is important for the company is that we have a very, very good relationship with the municipality, a very good relationship with the government, and a very good relationship to the administration. Especially the municipality has been very, very good in all the process. They have involved the locals, they have involved people in the settlement, and we can see now that it has been important because the project is very well accepted in Qeqertasuatjiat right now. So we thank you very much for that, and we thank you very much for the full political backing that has been on this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this. And then moving on to the last speaker, Hafstein Helgason, please.
President Grimson, Minister, distinguished guests, Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the history of Iceland and how the Icelandic people have been getting benefit from industrial development in the last 100 years. First to Efla. Efla is one of the 3 leading engineering companies in Iceland, totally Icelandic company, owned by the employees. And we have been working in Greenland as well as in other countries far away from Iceland, even in Indonesia, China. And this is possible even in 30 years, if the strategy is right and if you have the people with you. But you also need to have the know-how. In Greenland, we have been doing a lot of work for the municipalities, for the power companies, and for instance, we have been designing the recent power lines in Greenland, and our last large project here in Greenland is part of the design work for the extension of the Nuuk harbor. In total, we are about 320 people in Iceland, and then we have about 100 people working abroad in offices located in Norway down to Dubai. I promised you to tell you a little bit about the history of Iceland. We have had rapid changes in the last hundreds of years. And I decided to put this slide up because this shows in detail how things have changed. My father was born in the year of 1921 in a house like this on the left picture. House made of torf. And they heated the house even with torf. 100 years later, we have skyscrapers in the city of Reykjavik. And we are using renewable energy to heat up our houses and produce electricity for industry. This is development. But this comes not only coincidentally, it's a strategy. It's a bit of luck as well. And as you perhaps know, Iceland is well situated in the North Atlantic for this development. And the next slide will show you in few steps how this has happened. First of all, I like to point out establishment of universities in Iceland. The University of Iceland was established in the year of 1911, before we get totally independency from Denmark. That was a very important step in the history of Iceland. Much later, but in the 20th century, the establishment of the University of Reykjavik happened. But we have more universities in Iceland than those 2, but they are the biggest. But then we had the Second World War. And that was a time for changes in Iceland. We saw, let's say, more or less for the first time real money in our pockets. And we managed to save money during this period. And we managed to get our independence from Denmark. And that was because of the invasion of the Germans to Denmark, indeed, in the year of 1944. But after the Second World War, we started to think about how to use this money we have in our pockets to develop the country after being free from Denmark. That was a hard time, but we managed to do. And part of right decisions was to educate people in the country. Not only educate those in Iceland, also send them abroad. Of course, most of those went to Denmark and still do, but we also sent people to America, to Germany, and to the Scandinavian countries. We used the money after the Second World War and after this period of thinking over, to buy trawlers. And then we started indeed to be a fishing nation. And that was a big break, big difference in the history of Iceland. But then we started to fight again, fight with the English people catching in our waters. It took us a very long time to fight and get those out of our fishery zones and get the 250-mile zone. That means we have been fighting for Greenland and other nations on this earth to get those rights. And this is very important for us today. But I will not go through all of those points there, but it was a decision taken around 1964 to invite power-intensive industry to Iceland. That was indeed much earlier than tourism started in Iceland. The idea was to sell electrical energy and create jobs. And the first plant, aluminum plant, started in the year of '68. Most of you have seen it maybe. It's close to Reykjavik, on the way from the airport. Now we have 3 large aluminum plants in Iceland up and running. And they are indeed using most of our electricity we produce. They are securing income in US dollars, in Japan yen, and euros. They used to be a very big pillar in the economy, but now the tourism is the bigger pillar. And that is the new, let's say, the new wave of development in Iceland, that is tourism. But we are also facing a new industry in Iceland. Data centers are coming in, using our electricity. And we also see now silicium metal plants. And 2 are under construction, and 1 is in planning phase. And it's very interesting to see one of those plants, which is now under construction, that is located 3 kilometers north of the city of Húsavík, or the village of Húsavík. This plant will bring 126 jobs to the society. This is a German project, but we have problems because of the boom in the tourist sector and other sectors. They have to hire at least 50% of those workers from abroad. And they will most likely come from Poland, as so many others in Iceland. And in Iceland, the whole construction industry is now driven by Polish people and people from Lithuania. And a lot of those are also working in the fishing industry, fish processing industry. So without foreign laborers, we will have problems. But the strange thing is, regarding to this factory in Húsavík, is that Húsavík is the 2nd largest whale watching center in Iceland. This is a very interesting case showing us that industry and tourism can live together. And not only that, the power-intensive industry needs electricity, and those power plants, they are in the highlands. For each project of this kind, you need roads. Those roads are now used by the tourists. So it is a possibility to use the infrastructure, actually in the beginning built up for the industry, to use later on for the tourist. And the grid system we have is very expensive. 1 kilometer of a power line costs approximately $350,000. $350,000, and we are talking about several of hundreds of kilometers. This is mainly paid by the foreign companies, the owners of this power-intensive industry. Icelanders are getting benefit of that. I will skip some slides, but there is a very important for Greenland to understand that industry is linked like a chain with other industries. Harbor, off-taker agreements have to be taken, raw materials is coming into Iceland, but here you have to take in labor forces. The grid system, the power plant, etc. Mining company is mainly interested in mining. They are not interested in running power plant or being owner of a grid or harbor. This is an opportunity for Greenland, like we did in Iceland. So I am pretty sure that Greenland mining companies, they can use Iceland partly for their undertaking. Pre-treatment can be done here in remote fjords with relatively low portion of electricity. But then the material can be shipped over to Iceland for further treatment using the whole grid system and the cheap electricity. And not forget, Iceland is the only European country with free trade agreement with China. And nowadays, more than 50% of all metals go to China, taken out of earth. So I will only mention two things more because the bell is ringing. This is the airport of Keflavik. This is the future extension plan. Now, today, you can fly to 77 cities around the world from that airport. But there will be an investment needed during the next 20 years of the magnitude of 5.5 billion Danish crowns. And there is another project starting within few years, connecting this airport with the city of Reykjavik of the same magnitude. That will be totally private-driven project. We are doing the design, and we are looking for co-investors with us in this project. This is showing how Iceland is developing fast. Heiðar Guðjónsson earlier today mentioned the Dreki area and the oil fields there. That's very promising and could change Iceland as well. But take a note to the distance to Greenland. It's close by. Yep. So finally, I'm going to tell you about this Finnafjord project. I promised you, some of you. This is the future harbor project in Northeast Iceland. This will be the largest harbor project in the North Atlantic in future and could take in mining material from Greenland, oil from Greenland and Iceland, and cargo from China or other countries in Asia. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the session. I think we have already surpassed our time. We don't have any time for questions.
One question.
One very brief question, and absolutely only one this time around. Do we have anybody with a burning question? Going one, going twice, going three times? One question? Okay. Yes.
My name is Beningwa, and I'm a student from Lisbon. And I wonder that the panel doesn't consist of more companies and from other countries. But my question is, what are the less failures, or what do you say, less situations and successes that we can take advantages of and use within the future of developing the businesses?
So do you...
Less fortunate situations and successes that we can draw from each other in the Arctic. Take for instance.
So who's your question directed to?
The panel and maybe other companies can, if they have interest, they can answer the question.
Hello. Maybe if I understand you right, you are. I will try to answer this. I think cooperation is the key to success, and rapid changes, even changes like we are facing in Iceland now, are not good. This will cause problems, and we are already facing problems with this tourism boom. So rapid changes are not good. Slowly development is the best. Therefore, it's ideal for Greenland to start with rather small mining projects like by True North Gems and Hudson Resources. But we will, of course, see in near future maybe larger scale projects here, and you have to take care.
Okay, thank you for the question. I'll say it in this way, that if we in Greenland are going to start up more projects, other projects, and if we want to have success with the projects going on, then it's very necessary to realize that it has to be done with hard work. It's not easy. It's not easy to get investments from the outside. So the support from the public, the support from the government, the political support has to be in place. Otherwise, it's very difficult to start up. It's very necessary for investors from outside that they can see that it's not only the projects which is good, but there is this backing of the projects.
One of the principles in our legislation, if we look at the Mineral Resources Act, there are two principles that you need to look at in terms of trying to apply to the best practice. We try to apply the best international practice in the way we conduct and utilize our resources. We also apply best available technology in terms of our extraction. That way we try to be ahead all the time according to the trends and the experience on international basis. So I think our legislation is flexible in terms of trying to accommodate the best experience, not only in mining, but in general.
In continuation of this, I think it's very important that we also recognize the fact that we are all very talkative. We all believe in the best possible democratic processes as possible, but we also have to realize that we need to do more than just talk. And that's why I think we all should applaud and congratulate Eimskip and Royal Arctic Line with their agreement today, because that is what it is all about.
Thank you so much to all the speakers. Thank you for coming and thank you for listening. I'll just hand over to you, Ingador.
Yeah. I know you're all anxious to get a cup of coffee, and it's standing outside in the hall, in the foyer. I want you to be back 5 minutes to 4. So, I'm so sorry, but we have to try to. Yes, I can see that people are coming one by one. And as you've noticed, we are past our program schedule, so I would like to make a quick one. Let's start with the next session, which is looking at the Arctic from the outside, prospects and opportunities. And to moderate that session, Mrs. Alice Rogoff, publisher from Alaska Dispatch News, is going to moderate it. Alice, the floor is yours.
Can those of you walking in motion to those of you behind? We need the chime like they have in the railroad stations. How is it looking out there? Do we still have many left to come in, or are they? Okay, well, the president of Iceland is now in the room, so maybe now I'll start talking. Now we'll let the rest trickle in. My name is Alice Rogoff. Is this too loud, too soft? It's okay? Okay. I wanted to take a moment as a matter of personal privilege, as we say in English. Some of you may know I was a co-founder of this Arctic Circle with our esteemed president of Iceland, and I just want to thank particularly our Greenlandic friends here and the hosts in Greenlandic government. I know this meeting is far from over, but I have found it to be extraordinarily interesting. I'm learning much more than I thought I would learn, which of course is not surprising in the specifics or in the abstract, but I just wasn't prepared for how rich a conversation this would be. So my hat is off to all of you, and really my deepest thanks. What I wanted to say about this panel, in the same lines, goes like this. If any of you have been to our large Arctic Circle gatherings in Reykjavik, you've become aware of just how ferociously interested it seems the entire planet Earth is in our Arctic neighborhood, as we say. And that interest is a wonderful thing, but it comes with its own controversy and negatives as well. The first of which I've begun to hear in the US, not surprisingly, where we have the most vigorous democracy, we have some of the most outlandish thoughts being expressed. This one goes something as follows. The Arctic is a region opening up to development because of climate change. And because climate change is bad, the opening up of the Arctic, therefore, is bad. And as a result, we should not promote Arctic tourism. And I just want to say this to all of you because we know how bad ideas can somehow take hold in a worldwide dialogue. And I think that this one is the height of arrogance. It probably comes from people who think that the Arctic is only a place where polar bears live. And it's so important as we in the Arctic neighborhood come together to remind the rest of the world that there are people who live here and people who have rights to not just health, welfare, and education, but economic development also. And so let's keep that in mind. I don't know how we're going to generate our themes for the next couple of gatherings, but the people of the Arctic is the point I want us to come back to. Now, the group that you're about to hear from, other than me, because I consider myself an Arctic resident as an Alaskan, this group is not from the Arctic. And yet, as you will hear, they probably, in their own ways and perspectives, are as wise and clued in to the importance of the Arctic as those of us who live here. That's a wonderful thing. We will thank them for it profusely as the world gets more and more focused on us. So let me just briefly tell you who's here. First is Samtan Shansong. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Samtam. I have spent enough time with this man to know he is an extraordinarily interested world leader, and the fact that he's traveled longer to get here than anyone in this room should not surprise us, because that's his dedication to understanding the world. And perhaps later on you'll see he even arrived wearing sealskin boots, which he took off today in honor, I guess, of the importance of speaking to this audience formally. Next will be Martin Guntner. Martin is from the Bremen port, and he is in the last few minutes been telling me about the extent of his knowledge and involvement with what goes on specifically in Greenland. I think, again, we have to say, while he's an outsider, he's as closely connected as many outsiders are. Chin-Soo Lim, the Korea Maritime Institute head, similarly new to the subject of the Arctic, but probably reading, following, and as knowledgeable in recent years as any of us are from an Asian perspective. And we all know that the Asian perspective on the Arctic is becoming more important with each passing year. And finally, but not least, our American friend, Professor Berkman from Tufts, who is becoming a specialist in what in the US is referred to as the Arctic Ocean geopolitics. And that's a very rich, touchy, deep subject. He's probably going to have to skim over it lightly, but I think you'll find this all interesting, so I'll step away. Sam Tam.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to all of you. I hope that you are with us after a very rich coffee break. So I'm very happy to be here in Nuuk. I would like to take this opportunity to thank President Grimson and Arctic Circle, as well as the government of Greenland, for inviting me to come to this very exotic place, but important place, to share Singapore's perspectives on prospects and opportunities in the Arctic. Nuuk, as we know, is historically significant to the Arctic Council. Besides being where the first Arctic Council's first legally binding agreement on search and rescue was adopted in 2011 here, Nuuk is also a birthplace of the Nuuk criteria, which governs observers' participation in the Arctic. So the theme for this year's forum is economic development for the people of the Arctic. So in the last 2 days, we have gained insights on how there's immense potential for growth in the region. But as the speakers before me have reminded us, that a responsible approach to economic development is vital. It should also be carried out with respect for the environment and due regard for the people living in the north. While Singapore is still a newcomer to the Arctic, I hope to share today more on why this approach is important for Singapore. And first, let me present the view of the Arctic from Singapore. At first glance, Singapore's connection to the north is not readily apparent. In terms of ecology and distance, we cannot be further apart. Singapore is a small tropical island located just 1 degree north of the equator. And we are 7,000 kilometers away from the Arctic Circle and 11,000 kilometers away from Greenland. And it took me 32 hours to travel half around the world to reach here. But I'm very glad that I took that decision to fly this distance, because in the later part of my speech, you'll know that some species from the Arctic region also fly thousands of miles to reach Singapore. So despite the distance, Singapore and other parts of the world are actually quite closely connected to the Arctic region because of the weather change, because of global warming, and because of the weather patterns. The reason for our interest and concern regarding the Arctic is simple. As a low-lying nation, coastal nation, Singapore is especially vulnerable to the rise of the sea levels. If global temperatures continue to rise, and Singapore will be submerged under the water. As I remember sharing some years ago with my friends that if the seawater continues to rise, one day the Prime Minister of Singapore will have to conduct his cabinet meeting in scuba diving suits. Climate change is really real. So earlier this year, I was in Tromsø, Norway, for the Arctic Frontiers Conference. And the temperature then was a relatively warm of 2 to 3 degrees Celsius, despite being January, which is supposed to be a cold month in the Arctic calendar. So at the same time, the east coast of the United States was experiencing a very severe blizzard, affecting more than 100 million people. And closer to home in Singapore, March 2016 was the driest and the second warmest month in our history. And on 13th of April, we experienced our highest temperature in the decade. And I heard that this April has also been the warmest on record in Greenland too, with a temperature of nearly 18 degrees Celsius. This has caused the annual ice sheet melt season started 2 months earlier than expected. So with the region warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet, the Arctic is indeed as critical as a barometer for global climate change. So at the same time, a warmer Arctic will undoubtedly present new economic possibilities. In particular, the opening of new Arctic water channels, such as the Northern Sea Route, will significantly reduce travel time between Asia and Europe. So the new sea routes present both challenges as well as opportunities. So Singapore has one of the world's most busiest port, receiving about 120,000 ships every year. So every day we have more than 300 ships calling on our port, and every hour more than 12 ships moving in and out. So our marine industry has built up strong capabilities and credentials in shipbuilding and repair, offshore engineering, port operation, and support services. We believe that with all this, Singapore is in a position to contribute to the development of maritime infrastructure to facilitate safe shipping in the region. Ladies and gentlemen, now let me talk about how observers like Singapore can contribute to the sustainable development of the Arctic region. As a non-Arctic state, our engagement in the Arctic revolves mainly around science, technology, engineering, and management framework, or STEM in short. Our universities and research institutions are cooperating with their counterparts in the Arctic states to advance the common knowledge of mutual interests and critical issues. For example, in November last year, the National University of Singapore signed a memorandum of understanding with the University of Alaska Fairbanks to collaborate in areas such as Arctic climate change, sustainable development, oil spills research, and co-regions engineering. Incorporating with our friends in Arctic states, we aim to bring the discourse on Arctic issues to our part of the world through various workshops and conferences. So, for example, in November 2015, Singapore hosted the Arctic Circle Singapore Forum, the first of its kind in Asia. So we were very happy to welcome President Grimson as one of the keynote speakers. And in December the same year, the NUS Center for International Law and University of Tromso's KG Jepsen Center for Law of the Sea also co-organized a conference on the governance of Arctic shipping. Thanks to all these efforts, there have been an encouraging trend of Singaporeans taking a greater interest in and around the Arctic. However, not all Singaporeans are just pure casual tourists. I will bring your message back to Singapore that when you go to Arctic, don't just be a tourist. Go there and do something significant, contributing to the environment. So some of the Singaporeans are in the Arctic for a serious purpose. So one Singaporean had competed in an 8-day Arctic ultra marathon across Canada in March this year. And guess what? He came in second place. And then 3 other Singapore participants have also completed the North Pole Marathon, which was just held in Svalbard recently. So in August this year, 3 months from now, the NUS Energy Studies Institute will organize a conference on Arctic science, technology, and policy in Singapore. So this conference will focus on issues such as remote access to energy, maritime infrastructure, and shipping, renewable energy transitions, and the role of research and development. So we hope that this conference will help to foster and facilitate discourse and dialogue among relevant experts from within and outside the Arctic region. Singapore also works with the Arctic Council's various working groups. Our National Parks Board worked with the conservation of Arctic flora and fauna to track Arctic migratory birds that stop in Singapore during the Arctic winter season. Our Songai Borough Wetland Reserve provides a sanctuary to 34 species of Arctic migratory birds, such as the curlew sandpipers and the whimbrel. Some of these birds actually were paid a VIP visit by President Grimson when he visited Singapore in November last year. While Singapore's sea conditions are quite different from the Arctic, we have also shared our experience in maritime emergency preparedness through the Emergency Preparedness, Prevention and Response Working Group under the Arctic Council. So through this platform, we have regular exchanges to share Singapore's approach to interagency collaboration in managing oil spills, and also to share our experience in trials in using drones to monitor oil spill effects. So our private sector is also seeking to identify areas to contribute to the sustainable resource development in the Arctic region. Our oil rig and shipping company, Keppel, has constructed a number of ice-class vessels, including the first icebreaker built in Asia in 2008. So Keppel is now working with oil majors and drill contractors to design and develop the world's first Arctic-grade, environmentally friendly green rig. So I hope that all this will come to a fruition, and then a new generation of oil rig, cleaner, better, safer, will be in operation in the future. So ladies and gentlemen, sustainability is not the only consideration. In line with the new criteria, Singapore recognizes the artistics and their indigenous people who have lived in the North for generations across thousands of years, are crucial stakeholders in the region. So Singapore has reached out to the Arctic Council permanent participants to exchange views on various aspects of public administration, health, education, port management, and climate change adaptation, and also to explore how we can better understand and also support their developmental needs. So under the Singapore Arctic Council Permanent Participants Cooperation Package, we offer full scholarships for students from indigenous communities to pursue selected postgraduate programs at Singapore's institutions in disciplines such as maritime law, public policies and administration, and maritime studies. The examples I've shared earlier are just a few ways in which I think non-Arctic states like Singapore can add value to the development of the region. So in recent years, there has been overwhelming interest from many countries to become more involved in the Arctic affairs. This can be reflected from the number of countries applying to be permanent observers. While none of us have the ability to isolate ourselves from the impact of the environmental change, Singapore believes that it is the Arctic states and the indigenous communities who must live with the immediate consequences, and therefore they shall remain as the main steward of the North. So we hope to do more to promote awareness of the Arctic and also to contribute positively and constructively in a small way that we can to its sustainable growth and also to the empowerment of the people, a point that made by one of the speakers yesterday. So on this note, I thank you very much for giving me the time and attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Empowerment of the people. We'll remember that phrase. Mr. Guntner, the Senator of Economic Affairs, Labor and Ports of the Free Hanseatic City of Bremen. Wonderful title. Come speak.
Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, friends of the Arctic, you've asked me to talk about the question of how non-Arctic states see the opportunities in the Arctic and for the Arctic. Before I go on, please allow me to briefly tell you about Bremen, because this answers the question of why we are committed to issues of the Arctic. The German federal state of Bremen is one of the three so-called city-states in Germany and consists of the two cities of Bremen and Bremerhaven. Bremen is the smallest of the 16 German federal states with approximately 700,000 inhabitants. Bremen is one of the most important industrial locations in Germany, for example, with the largest Mercedes plant in the world where about 400,000 cars are produced per year. Also, the famous Beck's beer is brewed in Bremen. Bremen is one of the main centers of the European space industry and also for maritime research. Bremen has a unique science and research expertise from space to deep sea. This alone results in a large number of direct connections on the subject of future developments in the Arctic. I will go into more details and examples later on. Another central focus of the Bremen economy was and is and remains the maritime industry. We have a long tradition in the trade and shipping industry dating back centuries. Our container port is one of the largest in Europe, and Bremerhaven is a leading distribution platform for automotive logistics with more than 2 million cars handled annually. We are a center for the European offshore wind industry with a focus on industrial production, heavy cargo logistics, and science. Whether it comes to environmental protection or economic development, if you want to work towards a good future of the Arctic, you need scientific as well as maritime expertise. Bremen offers both. Therefore, we confidently consider ourselves as a partner of a good and sustainable development in the Arctic, and that is the reason why we are here. You asked this panel, how do non-Arctic states see opportunities in the Arctic and for the Arctic? Well, in 2013, Germany has presented for the first time ever the guidelines for its Arctic policy. The European Union, in which 3 Arctic states are also represented, has put Arctic policy to the top of the political agenda. We all know very well climate change will significantly change this part of the world with effects on many other areas of the world. And we also know if one wants to control the risks as well as the opportunities of inherent changes that global warming will bring, one has to act with a great amount of responsibility for the sensitive environment of the Arctic. The Arctic does not tolerate a gold rush. The Arctic needs a balance between use and preservation. The Arctic needs a responsible handling of the abundant resources, and first and foremost, the Arctic needs a greater knowledge base. Therefore, the Federal Republic of Germany has launched its own research framework program, which outlines have been very much influenced by one institution, the Alfred Wegener Institute in Bremerhaven. Yes, as you might suspect, the institute is named after the famous German meteorologist and polar explorer Alfred Wegener, who was killed in 1930 on the last of his 3 expeditions to Greenland. The Alfred Wegener Institute is an internationally recognized center of polar and marine research active in the Arctic as well as in the Antarctic. With approximately 1,100 employees, it coordinates the German polar research. The expertise of the RV ranges from the atmosphere to the bottom of the seas. At Alfred Wegener Institute, bio, geo, and climate scientists work closely together. As a backbone of the field observations, the RV operates several research vessels, research aircraft, and research stations in the Arctic and Antarctic. All of them are also made available to the national and international scientific community. The international ambassador of the German polar research is the research icebreaker Polarstern. The ship has just returned from Antarctica last week. Currently, the construction of a new vessel is promoted, which will be put into service in 2020. The research on polar and marine regions is also associated with the development of technological innovations. The RV also accompanies and carries out research for companies. This technology transfer of new products and services is meant to support the sustainable development in the Arctic. On behalf of the EU Commission, the RV will carry out the strategic management for a network of 17 countries regarding the European polar research until 2020. One thing is quite clear. The RV plays a prominent role in the research for the further development of the Arctic region. Professor Sauter, who kindly accompanies me and my delegation here to Nuuk, will certainly be more than happy to tell us more details about current research projects. This brief portrait of RV shows that the Arctic may benefit from the involvement of non-Arctic states, and thus this was also an answer to the second question that you have asked. How do Arctic states benefit from further inclusion of non-Arctic states in Arctic networks for development? For this, I would like to tell you about another concrete example of our cooperation. Increasing temperatures and longer frost-free periods are resulting in less sea ice. This development is taking place much quicker than originally anticipated and projected some years ago. This not only grants access to new deposits of raw materials, but to new opportunities for the trade and shipping industry, which will benefit from attractive possibilities via Arctic shipping routes. Our partners and friends in Iceland have recognized early on the potential of a new port built in the northeastern part of the Iceland. The port management company of Bremen Ports, was asked to execute first feasibility studies for the construction of such a port. Over the past 3 years, studies have been conducted with the involvement of Bremen Ports to discover not only if the construction of a harbor would be feasible, but also if highest standards for environmental protection and ecological sustainability can be fulfilled. 3D models have been developed, soil examinations have been conducted, weather stations have been established, and historical weather data has been analyzed. The managing director of Bremen Ports is present here today and would be happy to tell you more details about this. The results of the studies have been conducted so far are pointing in one direction. Yes, the fjord is suitable for such a comprehensive and demanding harbor project. After this conference, I will travel from Greenland to Iceland to sign a memorandum of understanding with the government of the Republic of Iceland and the 2 municipalities which are involved in the project, to further promote the development of a deep water port and the adjacent industrial area at Finnafjord. We want to build up a development agency to summarize the results of the technical studies, to develop an investment plan and tender concessions in order to win potential investors for the project. Ladies and gentlemen, not only in Iceland but also in Bremen, there has been a very critical discussion about the FINAFORD project. I've been asked, does the participation in such projects not contribute to the eventual destruction of the Arctic as we know it today? My answer is no. On the contrary, if the inevitable effects of climate change should take place in an agreeable way, then the economic development needs to be designed properly to meet those requirements. Using the example of FINAFjord, our answer is to use 100% renewable energy for the establishment and future operation of the port. Only in such a way will it be possible for non-Arctic states to meet our responsibility for sustainable development in the Arctic. Coming from the smallest of the 16 German federal states, we want to make important contributions for a good future of the Arctic. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. And now for the perspective from Korea, Mr. Chin-Soo Lim.
Good afternoon, His Excellency, the Honorable President of Iceland, Olaf Ragnar Grimsson, and all participants of the forum. I am Chin-Soo Lim, Vice President of Korea Maritime Institute. Before presentation, I'd like to apologize for my bad conditions of my throat, as I have a cold since last week. You might be uncomfortable to hear my voice, but usually I have a very nice voice, so please pardon me. First of all, thank you for inviting me to the very meaningful gathering, the Arctic Circle Forum in Greenland. We are one of the most representing places in the Arctic. It is my honor to get a chance to speak in here. This is my first time to visit Greenland, and to come here, I had spent 2 days from Seoul via 2 other Arctic countries, Finland and Iceland. And there's 11-hour time difference between Seoul and here, so I might be quite sleepy now. In spite of this long distance, the relationship between Korea and Greenland has become close gradually. In September 2012, the former president of Korea, Lee Myung-bak, visited Greenland for the first time in history. And the former minister, Krupi Kleister, visited Korea December of the same year. This March, the Minister for Industry, Labor, Trade, and Foreign Affairs, Bitus Kujao-kishok, also visited Korea and hosted a partnership seminar in Seoul. Based on this groundwork for cooperation, Korea Institute of Geoscience and Mineral Resources and Korea Polar Research Institute strengthening the cooperation in nature and natural resources and science sector. In the future, we expect that the bilateral cooperation will be promoted to policy and business sectors. Iceland and Korea are also expanding cooperation. President Grimsson visited Korea last November and had a successful summit with Korean President Park Geun-hye and visited Korea Polar Research Institute. Korea participates Arctic Circle assemblies since its beginning, and Korea hosted Korean Night event and introduced culture and policies of Korea last year. We expect to expand the field of cooperation in the Arctic. My institute, Korea Maritime Institute, has developed MOU with the Arctic Portal in Iceland. We are closely cooperating on information and knowledge sharing. My institute was established as a national think tank of Korea government to advise policies and to promote international cooperation on oceans and fisheries area. Especially on the Arctic issues, KMI carried out research on Arctic shipping, marine resource development, and fisheries cooperation. And we also developed policy cooperation plans related with the Arctic Council and implement these researches and plans. KMI has actively carried out cooperation with the Arctic Indigenous Society through bilateral cooperation and intends to extend the cooperation areas in the future. As you know, Korea joined the Arctic Council as an observer in 2013 with 5 other countries, including Japan, China, and Singapore. After joining, the Korean government developed Arctic Policy Master Plan by participating of 7 ministries and administration in 2013. An annual implementation plan has been developed to achieve our goals. 4 major goals of the master plans are strengthening international cooperation, encouraging scientific and technological research capacity, pursuing sustainable Arctic business, and securing institutional foundations. Last week, through intergovernmental consensus, annual implementation plan was established. This plan contains a feasibility study for building the second ice-breaking research vessel, enhancing scientific research, strengthening cooperation with the Arctic Council, establishment of domestic standards for polar code, and activating Korea Arctic Research Consortium. In regards to Arctic Council, Korea organized the Korea Arctic Export Networking, so-called KAEN, to support Korea exports to participating in working group and the task force meetings of the Arctic Council. Ultimately, we hope KAEN will contribute to solve the challenges to which the Arctic faces. As an initiative for the next generation, KMI has established Korea Arctic Academy in cooperation with University of Arctic, which is also observer of the Arctic Council, since last year, and visited students of Arctic region, including Greenland. This program aims to promote mutual understanding and goodwill between Korea and Arctic students, and the sharing of future vision about Arctic each other. The second Korea Arctic Academy program will be held in July this year with participation of 20 international students from 7 Arctic states and 10 Korean students together. This year, 2 Greenlandic students will join the academy. Ladies and gentlemen, besides very unique local challenges, the Arctic connected with the world in nature, environment, economy, society, and culture. Undoubtedly, this connection should be utilized to address the challenges which Arctic is faced with. The first, sustainable and stable development Arctic, I think we need to pay attention to development of technical innovations which minimize the harmful impact to the Arctic environment and society with cooperation amongst the right holders and stakeholders together. Lastly, through promoting regional forums such as this forum, we need to encourage awareness and information sharing to achieve trust-based cooperation. Korea imports most of energy resources from other countries, and 97% of trade depends on shipping. Moreover, regarding the climate, Korea is directly related with the Arctic and subarctic climate. For these reasons, Korea is expanding researchers on Arctic and enhancing political support and international cooperation. This time, besides KMI, the Jungang Media Group, which is one of the leading newspaper group in Korea, participated in this forum to introduce Arctic issues to Korean government, public and private sectors with balanced perspectives. We will visit Ilulissat and Nasarukuk as well. With this forum as a momentum, I sincerely hope Korea can understand more about potential and opportunities of Greenland and strengthening diverse cooperation between us. I guess the first image of Korea in Greenland was Taekwondo. Apparently, Taekwondo is a martial art to strengthen physical ability, but its basic philosophy is mental cultivation and heart to protect ourselves, family, and society. And also, it is a symbol of pioneer spirit with fears for us. I heard that the northernmost Taekwondo school is in the world is located in Kanak. I hope we have more traditional culture exchange between us in the future. Once again, I sincerely appreciate the Arctic Circle Secretary and Government of Greenland for inviting us to this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and Professor Berkman from Tufts University.
Thank you, Alice. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure and an honor to come to Nuuk. As Alice mentioned, I am an outsider. I'm a native of Southern California. My grandparents were from Estonia, Germany, Russia, and Austria. So I have a cultural sense of the world. Was all continents before I was 30 years old. Building on the comments by Premier Kielsen in terms of empowerment of indigenous peoples, and President Grimson's comments about global responsibility for sustainability of the Arctic. This is the neighborhood. The neighborhood is now in the middle of the world. The Arctic Ocean surrounded by Arctic coastal states, non-coastal states, indigenous peoples in both non-Arctic states and global society, all focusing on the Arctic Ocean. In this discussion, we've heard the term sustainability mentioned many times. A question for each of you. What is sustainability mean to you? And secondly, how will you achieve sustainability? The answers to these questions are as diverse as the people in this room. These are maps of the Arctic, each one representing different perspectives of sustainability. Fisheries, economics, peoples, they all are perspectives of the Arctic. Different types of perspectives, institutional perspectives. This is the world we live in. The world has different perspectives of the Arctic, and the challenges that are represented in this room are how to balance these different perspectives. We know that the Arctic as a region is going through fundamental changes. The Arctic Ocean itself is a new Arctic Ocean. The surface of the Arctic Ocean, which had been permanent sea ice for thousands of years, multi-year sea ice, is now open water across more than 50% of its surface. If we think of the Arctic Ocean as a system, imagine this room. On the floor of the room, we have a floor, we've got the walls, we've got inflow and outflow through the doors, just like the North Pacific and North Atlantic, and we've got a ceiling. If we took the ceiling off this room and all of us were exposed to the wind and the rain and the snow and the cold, guaranteed our interactions would be fundamentally different. And this is what is happening to the Arctic. The ceiling to the Arctic Ocean has been removed, and as a consequence, there are risks of political, economic, and cultural instability. These risks are important to address with hope and inspiration for present as well as future generations. This is a brief timeline. Certainly none of you can read, but on the far left side is a speech by President Gorbachev in 1987, and the far right side is 2014. In looking at this, oops, I didn't want to do that. There was a fundamental change in 2007, 2008. There were several things that happened in that year. One was that there was the International Polar Year, which was science. It brought attention of the world to the polar regions, and things began to change in the Arctic. There were some other fundamental activities that happened during that period. In 2007, there was a planting of a flag at the North Pole, ostensibly a Russian flag, but it was a private expedition. In 2008, there was the Ilulissat Declaration of 5 Arctic states declaring their sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction in the Arctic Ocean. These are important in terms of the timeline, in terms of transition. Before 2007, 2008, focusing on the Arctic Council and its set of common Arctic issues, sustainable development was identified as one of them. But in 2007, 2008, as an international community, we began to transition to a phase of investment and implementation in the Arctic. this is where we are today. This is the discussion in this room. We are entering a phase of investment and implementation. The challenge for everyone in this room is to understand and apply solutions that will achieve sustainability in the Arctic, to make sure that these investments are wise investments, not just for the present, but for generations into the future. And the concept of future has been introduced many times in this discussion. I've written down a few of the context of future. We talk about education. Education is in terms of future generations, not 5 years, 10 years, but generations into the future. We talk about energy. Energy thinks in terms of exploration, development, and production, 3 to 5 decades in the future. The Land Claims Acts that were mentioned yesterday, those took decades to negotiate. Climate operates over decades to centuries. There is the concept of 7 generations. Marine mammals live decades. All of these issues, opportunities, suggest that our time frame in terms of thinking about sustainability is decades into the future. Maybe not 50 years, perhaps even across the 21st century. This is a notion of infrastructure that is being developed. I would suggest in order to develop sustainable infrastructure, that it's not just the built elements. Certainly the built elements are important, mobile and fixed assets, communication systems, research systems, observing systems, information systems. These are what are being discussed here. But to be sustainable, the infrastructure must combine the built elements with the governance mechanisms, regulatory devices, policy devices, including insurance, in terms of the governance mechanisms. For example, a few years ago in 2011, an agreement on search and rescue was adopted by the Arctic states. This is a perfectly forward-looking agreement, but in the absence of the built elements to implement it, it's a hollow agreement. Same with the 2013 agreement on marine pollution preparedness and response. In order for the solutions of infrastructure to be sustainable, they must combine both the built elements and the governance mechanisms. In terms of thinking about the Arctic Ocean, there are regions that are unambiguous in terms of potential impacts. One of those is in the Bering Strait region, north of Alaska, north of Chukotka. It is a region that is impacted potentially by increased traffic across the Northern Sea Route, increased traffic across the Northwest Passage, and as the ice continues to retreat across the North Pole, there will be a polar route. Plus we have inflow and outflow through the North Pacific. In terms of thinking about sustainability, one of the elements, one of the industries, one of the market sectors that is not well discussed is a service sector. A service sector sits at the center of the governance mechanisms and the built elements. A service sector potentially provides return on investment for those that are seeking to build. And at the same time, a service sector facilitates the objectives of governance in terms of making sure that those policies are operational. Questions of sustainability, stability, and balance are at the heart of this discussion. I used 2 examples of this to think in terms of balance. On the left side is a map of the Arctic Ocean from the perspective of the seafloor under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. On the right is a map of the water column, and in the center of the Arctic Ocean is the high seas. This is a region that is unambiguously beyond sovereign jurisdictions. So if we think in terms of the Arctic, in terms of sustainability, the types of things that we are looking to balance, to create stability, to create hope and opportunity and inspiration for future generations, certainly economic prosperity is at the top of the list. It's at the top of the list for a variety of reasons. It's not only for the communities and the peoples, but economic prosperity potentially is the single most important feature to drive stability of the region. One of the players in the Arctic, which is unambiguous in terms of its influence, is Russia. And from the perspective of Russia, its economic future is in the Arctic. It is contrary to Russia's interest to destabilize the region. And so in a very practical way, the economics of the Arctic will drive stability of the Arctic. Then we have environmental protection and societal well-being. These are all important to balance. No one is more important than the other. We have urgencies of the present, and we have needs of future generations. We have issues of promoting cooperation and preventing conflict. In terms of stability of the Arctic, it is the most basic foundation for any questions of economic prosperity. In the absence of stability, the region will not see the investment that is necessary. And we have the challenge of balancing national interests and common interests. In a sense, the Arctic coastal states are looking inward into the Arctic Ocean, and the center of the Arctic Ocean, the high seas, provides an opportunity for the international community to look outward in terms of their common interests. And in this sense, areas like Greenland are as equal as any other region on Earth in terms of facilitating dialogues to balance common interests in the Arctic Ocean. The high seas in the center of the Arctic Ocean is unambiguously beyond sovereign jurisdictions. I would just note in closing, next year in March, with the collaboration hosted by the government of Greenland in 2017, we will host the Ilulissat Summit, which is intended to be a visionary, international, interdisciplinary, and inclusive dialogue among high-level decision makers and global thought leaders to build common interests to achieve Arctic sustainability across the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. I think we have, a few minutes for questions, even though we are running late. We started late. So have at this distinguished panel. There are some powerful subjects on the table. Mead, do you have a question?
Mead Treadwell from Alaska. It was nice to hear all of your presentations. My question for the speaker from the Korea Maritime Institute and also for Minister Tan is, what do you see the energy drivers for shipping in the Arctic coming? Will it be LNG, such as the Yamal project? Will it be other forms of energy? And where do you see your country participating?
All right. Thank you very much for the very important question. As usual, we always have arrangement with neighbors, so I will take the easy questions, and he will answer the more difficult ones. Well, I'm not an energy expert, so I really wouldn't know going forward whether the shipping will be using LNG or fossil fuel or some other renewable energy. But one thing is for sure, that when the Arctic water channels are open, as we have seen just now from the professor's graph, there are 3 possible routes. The shipping activity definitely will increase. And that's where a lot of companies, shipbuilders, liners and all that, will be interested to participate in this opening up of the new water channels. And Singapore is of no exception. I'm sure our companies will be quite keen to participate in a few ways. One is to participate in the shipbuilding activities to provide ships, ice-class vessels and all that, so that they will be able to, sail across the Arctic water channels safely. 2 is that some of our shipping companies probably will also want to take the opportunity to participate in providing the logistic and the shipping services and all that. So I think with all these possibilities opening up, there is really a greater need for all the stakeholders, the Arctic member states, to really sit down and discuss and work out a certain, polar code and shipping policies and regulations to ensure that the newly opened water channels will be safe, not just for the ships and the people, but also will be safe for the environment, for the indigenous people who live there, because this is the land where they have been living there for thousands of years, and they will want to keep it clean, pristine, and free of pollutions.
Thank you. So I'm not expert in this part, but I'd like to express my opinions. Actually, the emission control is very important. So the greenhouse gas is produced by the ship is almost equivalent to the tens of thousands of cars they make. So actually, everybody thinks that the ultimate goal is the renewable energy, but the LNG is the only solution between going to the renewable age. So I think the use of LNG is very important. And so many countries now starting over LNG propelled the ships, so it's very important. Also for the Northern Sea route cases, the Northern Sea route, the Arctic area is very vulnerable to the environment. That is very important. So actually that is not an absolute solution, but currently the feasible best solution is using LNG as possible. LNG is the best solution. Also, in the Arctic, there are lots of energies. So if you want to develop the LNG in the Arctic, there's the only chance to use the Northern Sea route is the only way to transporting that LNG. So I think the LNG, if the importance of LNG grows, the importance of Northern Sea route grows fastly. But nowadays, the price of oil is very low, so that's why the speed of the development is quite low now. But I think in near future, the use of LNG and the use of Northern Sea route is very important. Thank you.
Well, I'll just pick up on that question myself and ask again, because I think I heard this in your answers. Is one of the reasons for the slowdown in Arctic shipping the cost of oil, not just because of what's happening inside the oil industry, but because with oil so cheap, the cost of the longer shipping routes is less prohibitive to the shippers? I'm assuming that's true, and that's been the most significant explanation for the slowdown in growth of transshipment.
Actually, for the transshipment cases, most shipping experts expect that for the container shipping, it takes 20 or 30 years after that, because it's by the nature of the container shipping, you need lots of facilities and many cargoes between from origin to final destinations. And also, there are very complicated IT systems. But for the bulk carriers, a destination shipping case, that is the previously is possible because there are strong motivation from the oil and gas companies. But if the oil price is that low in these days, they have no motivation to using the kind of, as you know, there are lots of obstacles to using Northern Sea, not just for the ice, but was the search and rescue programs, or oil pollution, or communications, and darkness and coldness. There are huge lots of information. But in the company, from the company's view, if there are lots of profit, they overcome the kind of difficulties. But they're low, not feasible. They have no motivation to increase in the. But now they try. They did not say they stopped the Northern Sea route. They just starting very long time. So.
I think that's it. We're out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are just 15 minutes behind schedule, but that's okay because this is the last one, the last session. Please welcome the investors. The topic is Arctic investment opportunities, and to moderate the session, we will have Jørgen Skov Nielsen, who is Deputy Minister for Industry, Labor and Trade.